Hey there, Damawoods, and those who are just joining us. I am trying an experiment today because I've been told by some in our little community that my voice doesn't carry very well. Which, yeah, that's a sad fact. I'm kind of soft-spoken. That's the way it goes. So, what we are doing today is I bought a little microphone, which is supposed to pick up sound in all directions. We're gonna give this a shot, see if it works. So for those of you who are new to watching my little sermons every week, let me know if you can hear me. And for those who have attended on more than one occasion, by all means, do let me know if this is better or not, if this worked or not. Because like I said, it's an experiment. We're trying it out, right? So as we do that, I had wanted to go over kind of the theme of the service, because what I wanted to look at is some of the adaptations that Buddhism made to grow and develop and to really be welcomed into different places, right? Early on in the Buddhist teachings, this was, in the Buddhist kind of community, way back in the day, this would have been things like adding new texts as Buddhism went places. Why? Did we have to? No. Did we find it meaningful to adapt and incorporate things from local culture into our practice? Yeah, we did. So you see that in examples like specific texts devoted to Buddhist appeals to a local, lake rain dragon god. This actually happened in China. I'm forgetting the exact name, but that was a kind of a thing where the locals had this deity and Buddhists came in. The locals were kind of wary and said, no, we don't like you. And the Buddhists back in that day said, oh, no, it's all cool, we're all cool. See, we even have this text that says specifically that your deity basically talked to the Buddha, and the Buddha managed to convince him to become a protector of Buddhism. So we're all on the same team. This is all working out good, right? So Buddhism did that kind of stuff. And we grew and we developed. And so I kind of want in the comments, in addition to telling me if the mic actually works, I kind of want you to kind of give me a little bit of feedback on what you think we might need to do to grow in other places, in other cultures, in other communities, right? To develop that kind of same thing, but with the local populations. Or if we even need to. Maybe we don't, maybe we do. But let's talk about it in the comments. And the first example that I want to bring up while we're thinking about it is that we have seen Buddhism grow in a lot of areas where it didn't exist before, right? We're seeing temples all over the place in Europe, France, Germany, some in England, all over the place, more or less. We're seeing temples and we're seeing monks, full-on monks, of all places, the Eastern Rift Valley in Africa, right? We're seeing this, it's a thing, it's happening. This is the dynamic part of Buddhism that is saying, okay, we're going to go into these new areas and hopefully grow, right? We see this as well in other places, mostly South America. We see a lot of temples where there are diaspora communities or communities of essentially immigrants who brought it with them, right? We saw this in the 1800s in North America, where the first Buddhist temples in San Francisco came out in like the late 1800s, right? It's been around for quite a while. So, but in order to do that, in order to grow, in order to spread, in order to really gain a foothold, how does Buddhism have to adapt to these conditions? How does wisdom have to change, or does it? Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe we've got everything we need already. But to get into that, to get into why that's important, we have to look at some of the historical adaptations that were made. And specifically, I wanted to bring up more or less the addition of local divinities, like I talked about with the lake dragon rain god. So the four that I'd want to go over, and I will be putting probably images of each of these up in other places. I'm going over 4 specific bodhisattvas, all of whom were adaptations to local cultural concepts and structures, right? So the first one, we're going to start on this side. The first one is Marishiten, or Marichideva. And she was really an adaptation for warriors, because back then, we all know that warriors needed every bit of spiritual help they could possibly get. We still do, right? So the Dhamma community is a military community. We know that there are still problems within the military, within the armies, within the militaries of the world. We know that these things exist. We know that we need all the help we can get to keep ourselves moral, to keep ourselves doing the right thing. And a lot of times the military culture just doesn't work with that. So Marishiten, as we saw with history, that was also that kind of, we don't work with spiritual stuff, we work with killing stuff. That was a thing back then too, right? We work with doing the wrong thing rather than doing the right thing, because sometimes that was necessary. Sometimes it wasn't, and they did it anyway. But when warriors turned to their spiritual side and they came up empty, they were much more likely to not stay in the Buddhist fold. They were much more likely to not adapt to whatever faith was predominant. They were much more likely to say, nope, yeah, none of that. So Marichideva, or Marishiten, Molizitan, really was an adaptation that grew out of more of the esoteric side of the house. And a lot of these have more general backing, but Marishiten was very much a warrior-specific figure, right? She, because she is typically depicted as a female, her whole purpose was essentially to build on the hidden capabilities of these Buddhist warriors, these Buddhist fighters, right, as they went about their lives. So the things that were supposed to be part of her, right, invisibility, obviously not physical invisibility, because especially back in those days, you didn't make yourself invisible in combat. You made yourself known. You made your presence known. You wore colorful armor. You wore giant banners. You wore these unbelievably showy things, right, to make yourself known. So you weren't trying to hide yourself. You weren't trying to be invisible. You were, however, trying to make your designs invisible, to make your mind invisible, to really develop on that kind of level where your mind was so stable and so calm that your opponents couldn't read it, right? And part of this was also to develop, steadfastness, imperturbability, and mostly compassion, right? That's kind of that was kind of why they did. I'll leave it to your imaginations as to exactly how that worked out. But yeah, she had all of these qualities that they could appreciate and emulate and say, okay, this is awesome. I need to learn from this. I need this kind of protection. I need this kind of help. This kind of being in my life, in my combat. But also at the same time, they learned compassion through that. right? They learned some basic Buddhist practices because we had adapted this war goddess into the Buddhist pantheon. Did it work out so great? Well, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not here to judge that one. But we also see the same kind of things in some of these other figures. So moving right along, so we went from Marishiten, we're going to go now to Achalanata, or Fudomyo. And his whole deal is he was supposed to be imperturbable. Yes, he carries a sword. Yes, he also carries a rope. Why? What kind of things would that have brought to the table? What kinds of things would that have made possible, or what kind of things would that have done to people as they were thinking about this figure? Well, one, the determination to sit, to be immovable, to basically sit in the fire, as it were, literally and figuratively. That allowed a lot of people to say, okay, well, if the Buddha isn't going to budge on people, if the Buddha isn't going to give up on people, he's going to be immovable in his quest to help people, right? Because that's what the sword is for, right? The sword cuts through demons. The sword cuts away through delusions. It is not like a sword to kill people. It is a sword to kill delusion. And having that, and the rope that binds one's demons, that binds one's delusions, so that one can practice around them and practice and get to the point where one can actively confront them, right? Having that and seeing this figure who is not moving for nothing, right? Who is not giving up on anybody for any reason. Having somebody like that allowed people to say, okay, maybe I should be doing the same thing. Maybe I should be putting more effort into making sure that I'm doing everything that I can for everybody. That I'm not I'm not giving up on anybody. I'm giving everybody a fair chance, and I'm going to continue to do that out of compassion. So the next one, and we're actually going to go fully clockwise on this. So the next one is Avalokiteshvara, also known as Kuan-Yin or Kannon or Kanzeon sometimes. And her whole purpose, because very much Avalokiteshvara has manifestations that are male and female. And yes, I'm well aware that in the Chinese side of the house, she is almost always depicted as female. Not so much the case with Indian depictions or with a lot of Japanese depictions, even though they did pick up the female side from the Chinese as they brought that in. Right? So what is Avalokiteshvara's whole point? Right? What adaptation did she allow? Right? What kind of audience would she have reached in those days? Why would it have been so important to have this figure, this specific figure, the one who hears the world's cries? Well, who else hears your cries when you're small? Mom does, right? Which is why, probably why, when Buddhism went to China and Avalokiteshvara suddenly became very popular, that's probably why, right? Because she was basically similar to a very similar figure within the Taoist construct. And having a mom, or one who hears your cries, one who hears the cries of the world, having like this overarching mom, gave the Buddhists of that era a kind of a softer side. It gave them the ability to, so much like with Ashlanata, that's very much a very strong, determined presence. Avalokiteshvara is very much kind of the exact opposite. So if you're going to reach out to different audiences who have different perspectives and need different things. You need both of these, right? You need both the harder side that says, nope, we're gonna stick around, we're gonna hold hard, we're gonna be steadfast, we're gonna be immovable. And you also need the side that says, yeah, we're flexible. We can move. We can move to meet your needs. And that allowed Buddhism to grow in those times, right? And the last one, my own personal favorite, probably. Maybe not entirely, but probably. All right, so we have the Stagarbha, also known as Jizo, the earth store. What was Jizo's purpose in an adaptive environment? Wow, tongue is not working with me. So, Jizo goes to all the realms, including the hell realms, right? And so if you have all of these hell realms that people are sometimes going to based on their actions, you need somebody who's there who can help you work your way out of that, right? Who can help you with salvation, or help your family member, whoever, whatever family member died, out of that situation and into a better rebirth. That's what his whole function was back then. Now, obviously, he's been adapted for other purposes as well. Specifically in Japan, his primary depiction is as a child, right? Because he's also kind of like a patron saint, carrying the souls of lost children, those who've been miscarried, those who've been aborted, those who back in the day, not so much nowadays, but back in the day, infanticide was still a thing, a big thing. Those little ones needed help too, right? And so his adaptation in Japan, not quite as much in the same way in China, where he was more or less just the lawyer for the hell realms, if you will, right? The lawyer for those who, because of their actions, were doomed to hell, or one of the hells, one of the many, many, many hells. And if you read the Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra, apocryphal, yes it is, but it's so interesting and so unique, and it depicts every single one of the, or almost all of the hells, very briefly, and says, this is a hell, this is a type of hell, this is a type of hell, this is a type of hell, and you go here for, for doing this, you go here for doing this, you go here for doing this, you go to this realm for doing this. Who's there in every single one of those realms? Who's there to protect, to work as your advocate? Well, the Earth Store Bodhisattva is. Stagarbha is. Jizo is there, working on helping you get out of hell when you've done dumb stuff, right? By giving you access to the Dharma, by helping you to see where you went wrong and change course. Because that's what gets you out of hell, is figuring out that you did wrong, making up for it, and then changing course, not going back to that, not continuing that. So he was the advocate in China. In Japan, he was also, like I said, he was also really huge for those who had lost children. And for a very long time throughout history, child mortality was a thing that had to be reckoned with. Children usually didn't live very long, and those that did usually had pretty terrible lives, right? It wasn't all peaches and roses. It wasn't all, oh, hey, this is a great time to be alive. It was, hey, I made it. I'm 7 years old now. I'm older than most of my peers will ever get, right? Child mortality was a huge deal. And so having him around to kind of lift the little ones in and smuggle them in his robes as he went from realm to realm, as he went from, all of the different realms, smuggling those children up to the heavens. That was a pretty powerful thing, right? A pretty powerful adaptation. Buddhism brought this in because this helped the locals to understand, right? To do better, to live better lives, and it helped give them that comfort, that kind of sense that yeah, life may not be great, but we have help. We have somebody here who cares. So, I've kind of gone over those in rapid fire kind of fashion. Those are the kinds of adaptations that Buddhism brought in back in the day that helped Buddhism grow in these different places, in these very different cultures, right? The question then becomes, what do we need to do to help Buddhism adapt and grow in our current era, in our current climate, in our current culture? Do we need to do anything? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe we can adapt local patron saints and such. Maybe we don't even need to. Maybe we can bring in local cultural figures and say, yeah, you know what? This guy demonstrates, even though this person demonstrates, even though they weren't Buddhist, they demonstrate a very specific part of the Dharma. We respect that. We're going to put that kind of action up. Maybe that's something we need to do. Maybe not. Again, I don't have the answers. I don't claim to know. All I'm saying is, as Buddhism changed, as Buddhism grew, as Buddhism developed and went to different places, it had to adapt. So let's talk amongst ourselves. Let's get really into the weeds on this one. What do you think Buddhism needs to do to adapt to ever further environs that are certainly not India, that are certainly not modern day Nepal, that are certainly not that part of the world? What does Buddhism need to do to really take root, to really become a thing, if it isn't already? Maybe nothing. Maybe something. I don't know. Again, I'm asking you. So let's talk. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And again, do leave the comments on the mic, because honestly, I don't know if it'll work or not. So, leave your comments, and we'll talk next time. Until then, Dhamma Bud Salute.